Welcome back to RecordPoint's product webinar series. The product team and I are super excited to showcase the new features that we've been working on that you and your business might find useful. I'm Katie Price, a product manager here at RecordPoint, and I will be your host this webinar. This quarter, we have a jam-packed agenda. I will kick us off by walking you through our new enhanced Google Workspace connector, and then I will pass over to my fellow product managers who will provide you with updates on intelligence signals, reporting, infrastructure options, and new advanced search capabilities. Today, you will be hearing from Simon Thompson, Daniel Kang, and Chris Toon. But as always, we have the entire product team on the call ready to answer your questions. In terms of housekeeping, please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar using the questions tab. We will keep track of these, and we have set aside time at the end to answer them in detail. Without further ado, let's get into the connector update. If you're familiar with Google Workspace, you'll know that it is world-class productivity software. What if I told you that with RecordPoint, you could make your Google Workspace experience even better? Google's strong suit is that it allows seamless collaboration across applications. But, of course, this naturally leads to a proliferation of information that needs to be managed. Now, you can use our enhanced connector to manage your Google Workspace data effectively in RecordPoint, along with all of your other Google and non-Google data sources. You will be able to see all of your data through a single pane of glass and govern your data centrally, no matter what system it originated from. As with all of our connectors, RecordPoint is managed in place, which means that world-class collaboration experience of your Google Workspace users will remain untouched. Recently, RecordPoint announced our Google partnership. As part of this, we leaned on Google's expertise to enhance our Google Workspace connector with specialized support for Google users. For example, one specific way we support Google users is by ingesting labels. In Google Workspace, labels are customizable metadata tags that you can apply to documents. Many organizations already use labels to some extent to categorize their data if they're working in Google Workspace. For example, here is a shared drive in Google Drive. I have just selected a document which revolves around a procurement process for an AI chatbot, something many of your organizations might have been involved in recently. If you look at the right-hand panel, you will be able to see what labels are applied to this document. That is, the fact that it is a procurement document, the start and the end date of the project, and the fact that it is security classified as secret. In Google Workspace, labels are extremely customizable and flexible. The benefit of labels is that it can be useful to help your end users understand the context of the document that they're working on, as well as how it fits into your governance framework. With our enhanced Google Workspace connector, you can continue to use and derive values from these labels in RecordPoint. For example, here is that same document that has been ingested into RecordPoint. You're probably quite familiar with this view, but if we scroll down to the Google-specific metadata, you'll be able to see that we have ingested the labels. These labels might be familiar to you now already, but we've got the project end date, the project type being procurement, the project start date, and the security classification, all ingested as metadata attached to this record. What that means is you can perform a search on this metadata, you can use it to classify your information, and you can even use it to set a retention trigger. For example, here is a rules tree I have created using only Google labels. You'll be familiar with the first node of the tree, which is that the project end date is after the end of this year. I've categorized the documents with that end date as part of the procurement classification class, that is to destroy 7 years after the project has been completed. Let's take this one step further. Here is that procurement class in the file plan. As you can see, It is defined as destroying the document 7 years after the action is completed. In this particular instance, we have defined the action as being completed as the end date of the project on the label. Here you can see the retention trigger has been set as destroy 7 years after the end date of the project defined on the label. This is just one example of how using Google Workspace and RecordPoint together will elevate your data governance. If there's one message to take away from this, it's that we will support you no matter what system you're working in. We seamlessly connect to thousands of systems with standard configurations such as SharePoint and Google Workspace. However, we can also use our Enterprise Connector framework to accommodate unique configurations for highly customizable applications such as Workday and Salesforce. So, if you are currently using a system that is not managed in RecordPoint, please do reach out to us to see how we can support you further. I will now pass to Chris Toon for the latest update to intelligence signaling, custom signals.
Hi, I'm Christian, a product manager here at RecordPoint. Before we jump into our intelligence signaling feature updates, I wanted to quickly touch on the state of legislation and some key developments. Draft legislation to amend the Privacy Act will be taken to Parliament in August. It's a result of multiple years of consultation and a comprehensive evaluation of Australia's Privacy Act. The goal of the review is to align Australia with global privacy standards, such as those set by the EU's GDPR. Key reforms include an expanded definition of personal information, new rights for individuals to access personal information held by an organisation, and that includes the right to erasure of personal information. In some jurisdictions, that's known as right to be forgotten. To comply, organisations will need to understand their data and possess by building a data inventory that encompasses all their data sources. The reforms largely focus on data minimization as a protective mechanism. There are also a number of enforcement reforms and penalties for privacy breaches. We've summarized the reforms and what organizations can do to prepare in a follow-up email. So that brings me to intelligence signals, and I'm going to jump into a demo of the latest enhancements to intelligence signals. But before I do, I want to quickly refresh everyone on the feature as a whole. And this feature allows you to automatically detect private information at risk and low value data across your entire organization. So we're talking PII, PCI, and ROT. And now we have custom signals. You can also detect unique custom identifiers. This capability enables you to identify what you have and make informed decisions to protect it, enforce policies, or minimize that information you hold. For example, in the event of a breach, you can have a clear understanding of the compromised data and enabled rapid and measured responses. And importantly, disposing of data that contains personal information that is no longer legally required to be retained, thus reducing impact in the event of a breach. Okay, so let's jump into a demo. So here I am currently in the signals configuration area where all of the out-of-the-box signals are displayed. Let's do a quick review of them. So the signals include PII, which is used to identify items like names, phone numbers, and email addresses, those things which are personal to us. In addition, we also have PCI, which focuses on payment information such as credit card numbers. Now, just imagine being able to identify if there are any groups of credit cards in a file export, or somebody's sharing credit card information in emails or team messages. Lastly, we have our ROT signals, which indicate if an item is of low value, such as temporary files, small files, and empty files. Now, moving over to the Custom Signals tab, you can see that we already have a number of signals defined. I'm going to jump into the contract code. So the contract code is an identifier that is used across our organization to give contracts a unique identifier. So it follows the same pattern, 2 characters followed by 7 digits followed by a character. And because this is a well-defined pattern, it's a great candidate for the custom signal. And when you're creating one of these signals, you can use the inbuilt tester to see if your pattern is correct. For example, if I open that and paste in some text here, I can check if that pattern matches. This is really useful as it helps ensure that the patterns are accurate before enabling them, reducing the risk of incorrect matches. It really is as easy as just entering a name, a description, and that pattern matching string to get going. Knowing what signals you want can be challenges. So we have a library of around 300 signals to choose from. And these are signals from around the world that can be used to help get you quickly up to speed with the signals you want. Okay, by closing up the test and the signal definition, you can see how easy it is to create those custom signals. As soon as you've enabled them, items coming through the pipeline will be analyzed and stamped with the has field if it finds anything. And these fields can be used throughout the system, for example, in searches, rules, and reports. Let's take a look at rules. Here you can see we have a rule that classifies content based upon its location, so a SharePoint site. But what if that content is outside of that location? For example, sent in an email, it won't hit that rule. So a signal-based rule can capture these items wherever they are. And here you can see we're using that has contract code field to classify this. Another benefit is to be able to find sensitive content outside of mandated locations or sources. Here you can see I have a search setup that looks for all content with a contract code. And at first glance, that looks okay. But let's add another search clause where we look for all contract codes outside of SharePoint, our mandated source. And instantly you can see there's content in personal OneDrives, which may warrant further investigation or drive configuration changes to manage in alignment with your organizational policies. Finally, let's examine the enterprise reports and see how you can analyze custom signals across your entire organization. Here I am in the intelligence report, and I've already filtered it by has contract code. So you can see the list of items below are just the items containing that contract code signal. You can slice and dice by any of the fields, for example, date, this location, and other metadata fields. So you can see that if I filter by OneDrive, it filters that down to those 50 items that it's found outside of the SharePoint location. So it enables me to better understand why and where and why they are, potentially driving actions to remove or manage that content. So in conclusion, custom signals in the RecordPoint platform are a really powerful feature for identifying and managing information. And by leveraging these capabilities, organizations can enhance their data security posture and ensure their regulatory compliance. I'm going to hand over to Simon now. I'll take you through some more enhancements, including enterprise reports. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. So as Chris alluded to, RecordPoint has advanced reporting capabilities, which allows you to view all of your data across your entire data estate. So no matter which location it's in, you'll be able to see, for example, how compliant that data is with regards to regulation, for example. So how well categorized is it? How well are you disposing of it for the things that need to be disposed of? You can also get an understanding of how much sensitivity resides in that data. So how much PII or PCI do you have in that data, which would leverage our intelligent signals functionality that Chris was talking about before. And we've also just released a new report, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is our risk report, which helps you get an understanding of how much risk you're carrying across your entire data inventory across all of your sources, which I'll talk more about in a second. So while RecordPoint does provide you with these out-of-the-box reports in Power BI, which you can just click a button and open, we also give you direct access to that Snowflake data warehouse where all of that data is, which means that you can build any customized reporting functionality on top of it. So if you're already using Power BI or Tableau or Click or a visualization tool of your choice within your organization, you'll be able to access that data source and build out reports in whichever way you see fit. It also means you'll be able to blend that RecordPoint data in with other data sources that you might be using within the organization. So very powerful and very customizable reporting capability. Okay, so with that, I'll talk about the new report which we've just released today, which is our RecordPoint risk report, which helps you understand how much risk you're carrying across your inventory. So let's switch over to Power BI now. Okay, so I'm here on the risk report page, which, as I said, allows you to see how much risk you're carrying across the organization in all of your data sources. So this leverages our intelligence signals functionality. So if you don't have that feature enabled, you will need to enable it. So just speak to your RecordPoint account manager and they'll be able to help get that sorted out for you. So over here on the left, we can see how many records we have, which are low risk, medium risk, and high risk. And this will give you a good sense based on your data security posture management. Are those proportions in line with where you need them to be based on your security profile within your organization? And you can make adjustments as necessary. In the middle here, we have our high risk by location. So this will give me a sense of, is my high risk information in the place where it should be? Now, you can imagine that high risk information doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't have it. In many cases, you do need to have it, but the important thing is that you're taking extra special care of that information. So it needs to be in the most secure location that you have. So in this case, there might be SharePoint Online, in which case no action is required on that particular information. But you can imagine another scenario where all of your high risk information happened to be in a network file share, which you weren't particularly happy with the security posture of, which might warrant the action to go ahead and get that moved to a more secure location like SharePoint in this example. So this will obviously vary from organization to organization, but it helps you kind of make that assessment based on your own security posture profile and the data that you have on hand. Over here on the right, we have our total risk over time. So this gives you a sense of what proportion of high versus medium versus low risk do you have across your inventory? And this is actually normalized to a per record basis. So you won't just see this go up and up over time as you introduce more data into the system and your total risk number keeps going up. This is kind of on a per record basis. How well are we doing at managing the proportions of risk over time? And then down the bottom here, we can see we have a table of all of our records across all of our sources. And we can see that some of those are low, medium, or high risk. If I would like to filter that table, I can do so by using the controls up here. So I could show, just all of the high risk records, for example, or I could say, show me all of the high risk records which are in my network file shares because they might require additional treatment. How we've made these determinations as to how a risk score is calculated and how we apply the labels of low, medium, and high. These are based on industry standards, which are fully documented at help.recordpoint.com. So if you visit that URL and search for risk report, you'll see all of our documentation as it relates to this and how we come up with those kind of out of the box risk calculations. The really cool thing about this report is you can actually customize that. So we recognize that every organization is going to have different things that they care more about or care less about. And so we want to kind of bake that functionality into the report, which you can do with this report. So if I click over here, you can see that all my risk weights are kind of laid out here. And I could just adjust them as I see fit. So it might be in my case that actually an uncategorized record happens to be a lot more risky than our out-of-the-box calculation has given us here. And then I might say, well, actually a phone number is actually less risky. So I can adjust those as I see fit. What's also really cool is that as Chris was talking about earlier with our custom signals functionality, I could actually define any custom signal. So let's say it was a customer ID. So let's say if I'm a bank and I have a certain type of document that whenever a customer ID is going to appear on that document, I can be reasonably sure that that's going to have financially sensitive information. So what I could do in the RecordPoint platform is define that custom signal of customer ID. And then in the risk report, I can add that custom signal to the report. And then I might say, well, that's actually a really, really high risk signal for me. And so I want that factored into my calculation here. And so I can go ahead and define that risk scoring calculation however I see fit based on my unique organizational risk profile and how I'd like to manage that risk across the business. So that's our risk scoring report. As I mentioned, it does rely on our intelligence signals functionality. So if you don't have that feature enabled, go and speak to your RecordPoint account manager. They'll be able to help you get that set up, and then you'll just be able to get a really good sense of how much risk you're carrying across your entire data inventory across the entire organization. Okay, so with that, I'll switch back to the slides now and we can talk about some infrastructure updates. Okay, so a refresher on some of our infrastructure capability at RecordPoint. First, we'll talk about binary protection. So RecordPoint gives you the option to just manage the metadata itself. So that would be with binary protection off, or managing the metadata as well as the files themselves. If you're managing the files themselves, that allows you to use our classification intelligence engine to automatically classify your records across a file plan. It also allows you to export data across multiple sources from a single pane of glass within RecordPoint. And it also safeguards against inappropriate deletion at the source. So if something is inappropriately deleted, for example, in SharePoint, you'll still be able to retain a backup in the cases where that was not meant to happen, and retain that from RecordPoint as well. Now, if having binary protection on is not an option for whatever reason, but you would still like to use the machine learning classification intelligence, we're actually able to enable content sampling, which pulls through all of the data just temporarily in order to make a machine learning classification for each of those records, and then just retains a very small subset in order to update that model over time. So depending on your organizational policies and security policies and which functionality you would like to get out of the platform, we have various different options for you as well. The same goes for remote Azure blob storage. So by default, when binary protection is on, RecordPoint will be managing the service, the remote Azure blob storage that is retaining those binary copies. However, if you have an organizational policy where, for whatever reason, that would not be allowed, you do also have the option to manage your own Azure blob storage for those binaries to remain at rest. So again, regardless of what your organizational policies are in terms of data management and where that data needs to reside, RecordPoint has options for you. Okay, authentication enhancements. So as we work with more and more organizations, we've seen the need for more and more authentication options, which is why we're pleased to announce that we now support OpenID Connect, identity and access management systems, as well as continuing to support Microsoft Entra ID, or Microsoft Azure Active Directory, as it was formerly known. So we've specifically released a product which supports Ping 1 identity management, but if you use any OpenID Connect identity management system, please talk to us, as we're happy to support you when it comes to this as well. Okay, and continuing on from authentication enhancements, we have enhanced data warehouse security. So we've recently enabled SSO authentication for the RecordPoint data warehouse, which is hosted on Snowflake, which essentially puts this tenancy on Snowflake within your own tenancy. And this means that you can enforce consistent policies across all of your employees in terms of how they access data and what types of data that they can access. So no need to keep usernames and passwords to be able to access the RecordPoint data within Snowflake. You can now use the same single sign-on capability that you use across your entire organization. This also allows you to implement Microsoft and Power BI's security and access features, including role-based access and row-level security, which is a big benefit as well. Okay, so that wraps it up. I'll hand it over to my colleague, Daniel Kang, who's going to talk about some new features. Over to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Simon. If I haven't introduced myself already, my name's Daniel. I'm one of the product managers here at RecordPoint, and I'm really excited to share one of the new product enhancements, which is the equals to any of search operator. Now, the equals to any of search operator is a powerful tool designed to enhance search capabilities, allowing users to query multiple values simultaneously within a single query. This operator is particularly useful in scenarios where a field can match any one of several values, eliminating the need for multiple individual queries. The syntax is quite straightforward and simple. It involves specifying the field to be used for search, followed by the equals to any of operator, and then providing a list of values separated by commas. So I'll now jump straight into a demo and kind of explain and paint the picture. So I'm, a records manager. I'm looking for records that are from the finance library and are either Excel, Word, or PDF, either because I want to reclassify them or add them to a legal hold, whatever the case may be. And you can see here I've got PDF, Word, and Excel. However, this required me to have multiple multiple search queries, which is for format equals to Excel, format equals to Word, format equals to PDF. And I had to specify parentheses to make sure that the query matched. Now, that's changed. With the new equals to any of search operator, you can see that it's really just two queries, and it allows you to streamline the fact that Excel, PDF, and Word are all part of the format. So you don't have to worry about, these parentheses, and you still get the exact same results. Now, that's one of the places that you'll find benefit for the equals to any of operator. This actually extends to the rules tree, and this is where you can really gain significant value from this new operator, which will save you a lot of time. So if I jump into the rules tree now, you can see that I am pulling content from SharePoint and mapping where the library is human resources, the format's PDF. So again, for library is from human resources, the format is Word, and then finally here the format is PDF, Excel. And I did the same thing for finance, and you can see here I've got 3 extra nodes for the exact same classification, just for 3 different criteria. Now, this can actually get a lot worse if you start looking into, say, those IT administrative records or files that you no longer want to keep that have a shorter retention period. So your TXT files, say your DLL files, and the list just goes on. You can see here there's maybe 400 that just keeps going. Now, if I scroll to the top, what you can do now is if I import this new consolidated rules tree that utilizes the equals to any of operator, it really cleans it up to just about 3 nodes. You can see here that for human resources, exact same thing, but I mapped the format of Word, Excel, and PDF to just the human resources classification. Same thing with finance, and again, for all these IT administration files, the XAML, the CSS, the DLLs are all being mapped straight to the classification. Now, we've essentially reduced the rules tree from 300 or 400 to about 3. We've worked with customers now that have managed to reduce their rules tree from 500 to about 25. And I guess now you can see that the benefits are that there's efficiency. You can combine multiple queries into the one, reducing the time and effort required to perform searches. Secondly, there's clarity. It makes it a lot clearer, and it simplifies those complex search and rules conditions. And also the size of the rules tree, making it easier to understand. And finally, performance. It reduces the load on search engines and databases by, minimizing the number of queries executed, and by extension, the experience for the end user yourself. Now, there are a few caveats and limitations. Firstly, there is a character limit of about 255 characters in the rules tree and 5,000 in the advanced search. And a few considerations to note is that it is comma separated, so please ensure that the values are correctly separated by commas, to avoid syntax errors, and it also requires exact values. It only looks for the exact values provided in that list. Look, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My name's Daniel. I'm one of the product managers, and I'll pass it back to my colleague. Thank you.
To wrap up this webinar, let's recap what we've spoken about today. I walked you through our enhanced Google connector, Chris Toon showcased custom signals, Simon Thompson took you through risk reports and infrastructure options, and Daniel Kang demoed new capability available for you to use in advanced search. If any of these features are of interest to you, or if you'd like to discuss them further, please do reach out to your account managers. Before you go, if you are interested to dive deeper into any topics such as privacy, security, records, or governance, our Filed podcast might be of interest to you. We'll include a link to Filed in our follow-up email after this event if you'd like to check it out. If you'd like us to cover certain topics, or even if you'd like to appear as a guest on the podcast, please do reach out to us and let us know. Our team will stick around for a little while to answer any lingering questions, so please feel free to keep using the questions tab. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time today to attend this webinar. I hope you learned something useful, saw some things of interest, and I look forward to seeing you next quarter.